Stephen K. Peeples here, and I'm Skyping with Charles L. Granata and Martin Melucci. They're a producer and co-producer, respectively, of a new 4-CD collection titled Frank Sinatra, A Voice on Air, and it's spotlighting the Voice's radio career from the mid-30s to the mid-50s. And welcome to People's Place and StephenKPeoples.com, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks, Stephen. I love your work, so it's a pleasure to join you today.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, this is really a neat collection and different from most of the other, in fact, the vast majority of all of the other Sinatra collections, in that it's radio specific.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. I looked at this segment of Frank Sinatra's recorded music, his performances, as being the last great untapped resource in his catalog. So to me, for the 100th birthday, this was a natural to bring forth and clean up and restore and get out to the wide public, or wider public, some of his rare radio recordings, which are wonderful. So this has been a great opportunity, given the 100th birthday and the importance of this music, to be able to create a package such as this at this moment in time.
Well, I think radio factors into Sinatra's career in a number of different ways throughout the arc of his career. At the beginning, it would help. It was a launch pad, you know. At other times later on, it was kind of, you know, the safety net, if you will.
Definitely, I agree.
Can you speak to that and to the arc that this set kind of addresses in his relationship with radio?
Well, that's a great question. You know, we're really dealing with two things. We're dealing with the first 20 years of Frank Sinatra's performance career and the way that he helped to make radio, and radio made him a star. And we're also looking at a very important time in American pop culture and American history, because a lot of this box set really focuses on the war years. And that was a moment when radio was omnipresent and important for everyone in America. It was their cultural and social news lifeline, really. It was the way that America got information about the war and what was happening overseas. So, you know, at the same time as they were listening to Frank Sinatra, they were listening to Franklin Roosevelt on the radio and catching up on the news.
And Ernie Pyle out in the field.
Yes, yeah. Edward R. Murrow. I mean, all of these guys cut their teeth during this time. Radio played a very important part in American culture in the 1940s, and that's really when Frank Sinatra arrived on radio.
Well, let's talk about the very first performance that opens the set, which is, I won't spoil a surprise for people who haven't heard it, but the set opens with something really cool. And then the first tune is the Hoboken Four, and it's his first radio appearance. Talk about that. Tell us a little bit about the history and where he was in his career at that time, and how that helped.
First time I heard Frank Sinatra on the radio. You know, aside from him basically singing locally, that people would hear him where he would, any place that would have him, basically.
This really is an important moment for Frank Sinatra, because it was his first chance to stand before a microphone and broadcast to a national audience. And that first performance in 1935 with the Hoboken Four really was a seminal moment, and it made sense for us to start with his first performance on the box set. Unfortunately for Frank and his compatriots in that little vocal quartet, they didn't go anywhere. They did some touring with Major Bose and his traveling unit, but they really didn't make much of a splash. And from Frank's own account, you know, he decided he didn't want to be on the road and be doing the Major Bose tour, and came home a little early.
What's interesting, though, even then, he stood out from the others when you hear the performance we have there.
Well, yeah.
Especially with the longer version.
Yeah, you can hear that his voice really does shine, no parody, no pun intended, above the rest.
Stands out.
Yeah, so even at that moment, you can hear him very subtly taking command vocally, which is very cool.
Well,
it's a good point, yeah.
So what was the effect of that performance? What happened right after?
Absolutely nothing.
No,
Frank didn't appear on radio again, as far as we've been able to document, until 1937. And
just track 2.
That's track 2 on the box.
yeah, I was going to ask about the gap. There's a little bit of a gap, so that would be his next opportunity on national radio. It was 2 years later, right?
As far as we know, that's the next documentable thing that we have of Frank on the radio is 1937. And the interesting thing is that he doesn't even sing. He appears on the Fred Allen Show with a little jazz combo called the Four Sharps, and he talks to Allen and does the introduction and does it very articulately. So you can hear that he's got this charm and this charisma in front of a microphone, but he doesn't sing. He leads the group in exactly like you, which is very interesting.
And it's even interesting in the scope of the rest of his career, where he did try to do conducting here and there, calling himself a frustrated conductor. He did a few different instrumental albums, so it seems like early on he also had a bit of that conducting bug in him that had to get out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then, there's another 2-year gap, and in 1939 he's working as a singing waiter at a little roadhouse cafe in New Jersey called the Rustic Cabin, and that's where Harry James discovered him and signed him to a contract. And then, of course, in the 9 months that he was with Harry James, he spent a lot of time on the road and a fair amount of time on the radio, because the James Band was doing remote broadcasts from a lot of the places, the clubs, the venues in which they were appearing. So we do have some documents, not many, but some documentation and some recordings of Frank singing on the radio during those 9 months he spent with Harry James.
And so the Harry James era was really the launch pad. That really put him on the national map big time.
Sure, and the interesting is, too, just tying in with radio is how Harry James discovered him.
Yeah.
With his wife.
It's true. Harry James's wife, who was also a singer, heard Frank Sinatra on one of the remote wire broadcasts from the Rustic Cabin, and she knew that her husband was looking for a vocalist, and she said, "You might want to go to this little roadhouse in New Jersey and listen to this singer. He's really good." And that's exactly what James did. He just walked in one night and listened to a set, and he liked what he heard so much that on the break, he asked Frank to sit down at the table, and he signed him to a contract. It's really a very interesting and kind of like a fairy tale story, if you will, but it's the absolute truth.
Well, it's so random, and that's how so many things like this happen. Just the planets have to line up in some way.
Right. It's so true. And I did say, in my liner notes that if it weren't for radio, we may never have heard Frank Sinatra. And that really is my homage to Louise Tobin and her husband, Harry James, discovering Frank through the radio.